Can we stop a minute and talk about no child support?
There's a hidden message there. For the first time since we started this channel, I was approached by an indie dev who wanted me to roast his upcoming game's UI. And because it's an indie dev, I was like, of course, plus they're modders, and I love modders. Because this is a roast, I had Skynet generate some UI jokes. Your menu system gave me so many pop-ups, I thought I was back in the 90s downloading music on LimeWire. I'm Lucas Olivieri, the creative director of Loreworx, a gaming startup, and redesigning game interfaces is what we do in this channel in hopes that a developer might make a change or two. This is Over the Top World War I is being made by Flying Squirrel Entertainment. This is a team of 4 devs who used to be modders. They modded Mountain Blade Warband, made Mountain Musket, and eventually Napoleonic Wars, which is pretty fucking awesome. So when they emailed me asking me to obliterate their UI, I couldn't say no. So let's start with the main menu. Seems logical. There are a number of things making this design look dated. The font choice and the divider icons used, for one. Personally, they remind me of old westerns more than the Great War. Font choice can have a huge impact on UX. Older games used to be more adventurous, picking more stylized fonts. The industry shifted away from that a very long time ago though, focusing on the reading experience instead. Rounder fonts are simply more comfortable to read than ones with sharp edges. Then there are the buttons that I rarely ever see in a main menu screen. Credits, socials, and the language selector. These don't belong here. I'd put them in the options screen. And lastly, the logo. 3D flags used to be cool in the 90s, I'm not gonna lie. But the main problem here is saturation. The colors are too vivid. This is a war game. Those flags are too damn happy. Oh, and this stats panel needs its own dedicated screen with cooler stats. You know, like the most distant kill, the most enemies killed in an explosion, that kind of stuff. The kind of stats that make you want to see if you can do better. I personally don't really care much about the number of trenches dug. I'm not saying they shouldn't show that, but have some cool, interesting stuff in there too. Mainly though, just get the stupid thing out of the main menu. But now let's talk about the background image. It's important to know your game's strengths and weaknesses when you're marketing it, especially when you're low budget. The character models here look kinda goofy. Plus they're too clean. I don't think they should be getting this much attention. They don't sell the game. Instead, I'd focus on creating an atmosphere here, like a night scene with bullet tracers. No background music, just sound effects. A single soldier sitting, eating his rations, living the trench life. It's just another night for him. He isn't the focus here though. He's just close enough for the player to notice it's the character from the character creator, but far enough so that the character model doesn't make the scene look unrealistic. Kind of like an Easter egg. I think that would be neat. Anyway, let's redesign this screen. My intention here was to make this screen look gloomy, dark, grim, and atmospheric, while modernizing the design of the interface. This background is from a scene in Battlefield 1, which I later color graded. It's just for reference. I'd set up a scene like this in Engine and add a player character to it. I think that would make it more intimate and interesting. As for the interface changes, I obviously went with a vertical layout instead of that horizontal one. I think it matches the background scene well, and it gives the developers all the space they need to add as many buttons as they want. I desaturated the game's logo and made it match the scene lighting, and I changed the font here to a rounder one. This is still World War I era font though. It's used in some period posters. I thought this was a nice compromise between readability and aesthetics. And my last change was removing those extra buttons and adding the stats button that would take you to the dedicated stats screen. Now let's get into a battle to talk gameplay and destroy the HUD. I mean redesign it. The game's HUD gets a number of things wrong, but it's not all bad. A huge part of good UX is giving players what they're familiar with. Think of all the competitive shooter games you play. Where's the ammo counter in those games? I guarantee it's not in the f***ing top right corner. This is literally the most important element on screen, and it's in the most peripheral of your peripheral vision. Another huge part of good UX is prioritization. Of all the information displayed on this ammo counter, what's most important? The rounds in the cylinder. How many shots I get before having to reload. That's the most vital piece of info here, followed by the cylinder or magazine capacity and the total ammo I have left. Everything else is less significant, but the game has it backwards. The gun you have in your hand is given the most importance, and the stuff that's actually important is tiny and sharing screen space with these confusing little icons. So not only are you forced to move your eye to the top right corner to check on your ammo, you also need to spend an extra second looking for the information in the counter. On the bottom right is your HP bar, your stamina bar, and a body indicator mannequin thing that changes when you crouch, sprint, and do other things. But in a third-person game, totally unnecessary. Your character's right in front of you. As for the bars, well, usually HP isn't very important in these games because you die too fast. But if the devs want to show these bars, then actually show them. These are very thin and semi-transparent. On the left side, we have an interesting little feature that's exclusive to the officer troop type. You call in strikes and whatnot. It's actually pretty cool. You gain credits over time to then spend on these call-in abilities. White means you have enough. Red means the opposite. Normally games use gray in that situation, but this little hotbar is transparent when inactive, so gray would not work. Red is a good choice. This green bar, however, isn't. It's unnecessary. It represents the amount of credits you have. That's already shown as a number though, making the bar redundant. It could be here to show players that there's a cap to the number of credits you can have, but you can do the same thing with your credit number by changing the font color, for instance. It's not all bad news though. I think the kill notifications are done well. Top of the screen, away from your eyes, because it's the least important thing on screen. And I also like the scoreboard element with a neat little compass, a match timer, and the capture points underneath. Pretty good execution. No changes here other than the font used, if it ever comes to that, obviously. But let's change everything else. Oh look, the ammo counter is now on the bottom right, where it's been since at least GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64. I redesigned it while prioritizing the important stuff. In bold here is how many rounds you have before reloading. The bottom bar mirrors that. It goes down as you shoot and fills back up when reloading. The original design does this with this thin green bar. I removed the weapon name. In the redesign, it would only show for a few seconds after switching to that weapon. Lastly, I tried to add some distance between the grenade counter and the ammo counter to reduce the amount of info in such a small part of the screen. Remember, the goal here is to know your ammo without taking your eyes off the middle of the screen where the action is. I relocated the HP and stamina bars to the bottom left and hopefully made them useful because now you can see them. The last thing I redesigned is the officer hotbar. This is a deactivated state. Instead of a sentence telling players how to activate the bar, I used the keybind helper and wrote officer call-ins. When you press Alt, the message changes to the second part of the tutorial. Use number keys to select. And when you press a number key, the message then switches to the ability name. As for the visual changes, well, it's prioritization once again. What's the important piece of information here? Your credits. So I made them nice and clear and gave them this little icon. The second most important element here is the ability costs, so they're larger too. Redesigning this little hotbar was challenging because I don't like its position on screen. I feel like it's invading the center of the screen. So I also designed a vertical version. Here's the deactivated state after you press Alt and selecting an ability. I asked several of my friends which they prefer and I got different answers. I don't know which I like more myself. So I think the games should let players choose if they want the vertical or horizontal hotbar in the options screen. When we give players options, everybody wins. My last little tweak in this screen was moving the kill notifications to the top right so it doesn't interfere with the vertical officer bar on the left. This gameplay actually reminds me a lot of Mountain Blade. These guys are modders, right? They modded Mountain Blade. Mountain Blade is a game that you get addicted to, and part of you hates you for it because it's so janky. You know, the game is so janky. Nothing about Mountain Blade Warband is smooth. And you start playing it and it's like, why do people like this thing? And it's 250 hours later and you're still going, why do people like this thing? I don't get, why do I like this thing? You know, I don't understand. I shouldn't. During my gameplay, I only tried to build a trench, dig a trench once. And that's because I got really close to the enemy spawn point, and then I tried to build a trench just to like camp at the spawn point. I think if they want to really incentivize players to use trench warfare, I think that they need to rethink the rewards that you get for digging trenches and stuff. Because honestly, I felt no need. Because I had plenty of cover around and stuff like that, so I just used the stuff in the terrain. If the idea is to have this different type of competitive multiplayer gameplay, the name of the game is over the top. If you want to force trench warfare, then obviously you either need to have maps that already have these pre-built trenches, which they do, or you need to really reward players for digging new trenches.
Having a option of a open field map without anything to get cover, so every player...
Right, and then you have to dig a trench. Talk about colors, right? So, I mean, look at this bleeding icon that you're using. It's this dull red. Let's call it dull red instead of full red. Like if you look at the RGB numbers, if you went 255R, then 00 for a GB, you would end up with this bright effing red because it's 100% red, okay? Super bright. This is dull. But then you're switching to the healing icon and it looks like you went 255 green. When you're designing these things and you're going, you know, this icon is going to be in a very similar theme, a very similar aesthetic from this other icon, you also need to think of the colors, and the color cannot make this much of a difference. You can't go dull red and then neon green because it's jarring. Imagine you have this website and all of the website is dark mode with pastel colors. And then you open a link or something and it starts using these really bright greens and bright reds. You would go, oh my God, what happened to the pastel colors? And it's the same thing with UI design in games. If you're using these sets of icons, they all have to follow a color code. So there's no jarring difference between the colors that you're using. And this game is using greens, and they're like pastel dull greens. Look at the health bar. That type of green, if you use that same green on that healing indicator that you had instead of the neon green, I wouldn't be having this reaction. Which, by the way, is a giant nitpick, but that's what I do. By the way, people, if you're watching UI redesign videos just to comment that, oh my God, you're nitpicking so much, it's a UI redesign video. What do you expect? We pixel hunt. It's what UI designers do. I always get a comment like that. It's like, nitpicky, you're nitpicking. It's the UI. You know what UI, good UI is? A collection of nitpicks. That's all it is. Let's go back to the menus for more redesigns. Destruction. This profile screen is rather disappointing. It's just not useful. When you open it, this little panel appears, and here you can duplicate and delete your profile and create a new one, but that's it. You'll find nothing else here. Well, other than your level and how many credits you have, but that's shown on all other screens. So really, the profile screen is a waste of time and we need to change that. But before I show you the redesign, I want to touch on the top and bottom bars here. Using bars like these have become more of a trend in game UI design. It kind of creates that movie letterbox look. It makes game screens look elegant. That said, this is not how you design them. These are boxes, not bars. To get the bar look, you can't have a border going around the entire shape like this. That makes it look dated. Okay, here's the redesign. The biggest change here is in game design, really. I made the screen useful by doing two things. I turned it into a stat screen that shows your personal stats. These are currently displayed in the main menu, along with the game's global stats. But I didn't just put them here. I designed a little rank system to make things more interesting, kind of like achievements. I added these progress bars to make the presentation more visual, and I typed a little message that would change according to the player's rank. It's a way to have a little fun, maybe, break the fourth wall. These stats also create a retention layer. You want to keep playing to unlock the next rank. In online games like these, retention is king. I removed the player level from the top bar. Now it's only shown in the profile screen. I also added a little icon to show your progress through the army ranks. I know these icons are not historically accurate, so don't at me. It's for reference. And while redesigning the level bar, I thought of a feature that could be kind of neat. I said I thought the soldiers looked too clean in the main menu redesign, which is a problem because World War I is known for shit hygiene. Like, soldiers were covered in gunk. The trenches were absolutely disgusting. So wouldn't it be kind of cool if your character looked clean at level 1 and his uniform got progressively dirtier as you leveled up? So by the time you got close to the level cap, your dude looked absolutely filthy. Like level 1, you're a new recruit. Level 10, you've been living in a trench for years now and can't remember what a shower feels like. I think indie games need niche little features like these, and it would be cool to see a disgusting player character in the match and think, oh shit, they're high level. As for the other changes, I desaturated the scene a bit because the original was too colorful, and I obviously redesigned the top and bottom bars. Navigation buttons are now on top. White obviously indicates the active state with a little light up effect on the line below it for added flair. Gray is inactive, and the hover state would also be white. And I went with the Apple Vision Pro frosted glass look under all of the redesigned panels because I just love the look of the blur effect. It's like my favorite UI look today. I also try to fit in one of my favorite UI design trends, which is blending the interface with the 3D character model. If you enjoy this redesigned video, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. You'll be helping us make our own game, and we'll be forever grateful. Alright, let's move on. I see you took inspiration from IKEA furniture manuals because I can't figure out what any of these icons mean. Uniform screen now. Bit of a weird name for it, but whatever. This is where you customize your soldier. Each specialization has its own set of unlockables, some of which you can change textures. It's kind of neat. You also select the perk for each soldier type. But let's go over some of the issues here. Starting on the left side. This is a customization screen first, but you'd be forgiven for thinking it was a troop selection screen, the one you get during the battle. So much of the real estate here is taken by these elements that have nothing to do with customization. Giving each faction its own button works because there are only 2 factions, but if they want to include individual countries in the future, they won't have the space. Then you have a list of troop types. Not the best presentation for a customization screen. For the actual troop selection where you want to quickly change types, yes. But for this screen where you'll be spending most of your time on the loadout and uniform, it's unnecessary. It takes too much space, and the perks below suffer the consequences. There's no room to adequately present these perks, making them look like an afterthought. But now let's look at the right side. These stats need to be presented visually. What is 75.87 accuracy? Is that good? Is 199 range damage good? I have no clue. A visual presentation would give me that clue. I don't have major issues with the loadout part of the screen. I just think it's cluttered with unnecessary icons and information. We don't need an unlocks counter for 3 items. It's obvious. Save these for much bigger selections. And on that note, the item tiles that haven't been unlocked could use a little cleanup. They often have an icon on the bottom right and the unlock cost on the top left. But the important bit of information here is the price. It should be the focus. We can show the other icon after the item gets unlocked. Here's the redesign. The troop selection part of things is now much smaller, and it's really easy to add as many factions as the devs want. You obviously click on the arrows to change the selection, but this could also be repurposed as a drop-down menu to reduce the number of clicks. The perks are now shown as a scrollable list. The devs can create as many perks as they want without running out of space. The selected perk gets this white bottom line. The same line is used to show selection in other redesigns. Instead of showing the description of the perk on the bottom of the screen, you now get a tooltip next to the perk you've got your mouse on. With the possibility of adding more perks, an unlocks counter is now actually useful, so I put one on the bottom here. I kept the screen similar to the profile screen on the right side. You have your loadout and uniform buttons on the top right. Below that is the visual presentation of your stats that I talked about. Now you know what's good and what isn't. I didn't change too much of the loadout section. Mainly got rid of the unlocks counters and the icons inside the locked items. I added this little arrow next to the selected item's name to make it easier to know it refers to the items below and not the row above. This is an issue in the original screen. And I left plenty of space to add more items during development or after launch. So when you click on single player, the one thing that you can do is instant battle right now, and then you select your maps here. It would be nice to see like a little preview of what that map looks like. The game doesn't have that yet. That's the instant battles part of it. What's interesting about this is, number one, the campaign stuff that will, I believe, make or break this game. Because again, just like Mount & Blade, the battles themselves are fun, but not enough for you to play the game for, more than 5 hours. It's the campaign that does that. What is really interesting to me is the battle simulation mode. This got my business mind going crazy with possibilities, because I see in the picture that they use, I see this axis control, these arrows. So it's this green arrow with the red arrow, and I'm assuming there's a blue arrow here that you can't really see. And the reason why this is super interesting to me is I follow a lot of history channels, and there are a number of big YouTube history channels that use games like the Total War series to recreate footage of historical battles. And I do not recall any one of these channels using something like that for the Great War, for World War I. And so when I saw this with the axis control, I thought, oh my gosh, if that is what they are thinking, this is a niche that I believe could be really beneficial for this game. If you have a battle simulation mode where you can actually control the troops and have them execute things, almost like in a timeline, almost like you're building a video, editing a video, and you just send keys to the owners of these historical channels. It's like, look, we have this battle simulation mode. You can actually recreate these battles that you're going to make videos of. And we will let you have like a flying free mode, free camera, right? And then you can actually use that in your videos. It's freaking genius, I think, for a game that probably has zero marketing budget. I hope that's what they do. If not, if that's not what they were thinking, hopefully they are now. And I just want my 10%. That was over the top, and I really hope that I helped. So if you like this video, then click this other video, because YouTube thinks you're gonna love it, and YouTube knows you better than your family does. It's just that you haven't admitted it yet. And as always, don't forget, the fun is business, and if you drink, don't order an artillery strike.